Hey guys, it's Matt Wenning at winningstrength.com, and today we're going to talk about the 3 phases of training. Now, I think that if you guys understand these 3 phases, it's not only going to help you make better decisions throughout an entire year or a couple years of training, but it's also going to give you some key insight on why you may want to use some of the manuals in your training. So let's get to it.
Lately I've been living like I can't take a loss. They ain't wanna help me, that's what made me a boss. You can't kill my confidence, I think I'm the man. We don't give a f, that's what they don't understand. I'm back again like flu season, I broke records while loose leafing. I'm coming down my roof, leaving, don't give a f, I don't care. Did the by my lonesome, no wonder now I'm on one. No shortcuts on that long run, all I really want is my share.
Okay, so when you're training, most people don't break their year or multi-year process down into phases, but in reality you should. And the reason that you should is because you should always have a goal in mind, but it doesn't necessarily mean that goal stays ultra specific year round. Why? Well, one of the big reasons is because of mileage, but the other main reason is psychological burnout. The problem with training specific all the time is that most people cannot do that for any more than 1 to 3 years and they're completely fried out. Well, in reality, if you want to be the strongest you can be, you're probably going to have to stay in the strength sport for at least 15 to 20 years in order for you to see your maximal potential. So for most of us, if you think that as you're 16 or 20 years old that you're going to train for 2 years and be a world record holder, you're sorely mistaken. That's not going to happen. In reality, there's only a handful of Maddoxes and Larry Wheels in the entire industry that can train for a short period of time and already be a juggernaut in the field. In reality, for most of us, including myself, I started working out when I was 11 years old, and I didn't break my first world record until I was 28. But I will tell you one thing, I have no injuries. And why? Everything was long-term thought process, okay? So how do we get to this? Well, we have to understand that there's 3 different phases of training. 1, we have a preparatory phase. Now the preparatory phase usually is designed around your weaknesses, okay, that's step 1. And step 2, it usually is creating a new base in your pyramid. So if we look at this graph right here, your base pyramid should be GPP and fixing weaknesses and structural imbalances. Once we've created that, say in a 3 to 5 or 6 month, maybe even a year or 2 base, then we can start slowly working up to the top of the pyramid to create a main goal, okay? So the first stage is preparatory stage. Now, we have manuals on preparatory stages. We have off seasons, hypertrophy, and power building manuals. Those manuals are not necessarily designed to be a powerlifter. They're designed to help and accentuate powerlifting training in order to start a new cycle with less weaknesses. So what would we focus on in the preparatory period? Well, 1, we could focus on hypertrophy like in the hypertrophy manual. 2, we could focus on isolateral development, meaning most all of us, including myself watching this video, is going to have a left or a right side dominance and a left or a right side weakness. Correcting these imbalances is not only going to make you more powerful, but it's going to reduce mileage. If you have a super strong leg and a weak leg, you're only as strong as your weakest side. And that should be corrected in a preparatory phase. And that's also why we created, again, the off-season manuals and hypertrophy manuals, and you'll find that some of them have isolateral emphasis. Why? We're trying to correct imbalances before we get to the next stage. Now, the next stage would be our main prep phase. That means sport specificity. So if I'm trying to be a powerlifter, I'm going to do a lot of straight bar squats, I'm going to do a lot of bench pressing and a lot of deadlifting. Now, if we have done a proper preparatory period, we should see immense gains when we specifically train because we don't have any weak links in the chain. What I find is that most people are in this main phase too long and they're not stripping everything back down and coming back down to baseline and working on their weakest link. What are some of most people's weakest links that make them fail in the main preparatory phase? Well, 1, hamstrings. Hamstrings are a huge problem for most people. The quadricep to hamstring ratio not only protects, reduces pain in the knee, but it also helps the hip and the rest of the body function correctly. Same thing holds true with glutes. Most people don't have enough glute activation and they don't have enough lower back conditioning. So if you're at the main phase of training and you're dealing with all of these injuries and imbalances, the chances of you peaking to a new PR, especially when you get super strong, is going to be marginal. That's why step A, the preparatory phase, is so important. Once you get to the main phase, specificity takes over, and you're going to need to start prepping to hit a new PR. Now, how long should each of these phases last? Well, that's interesting. And again, it depends. I would say that the preparatory phase needs to last at least one mesocycle. If you don't know what a mesocycle is, we're going to do other YouTube videos on it, but I would highly suggest looking at the manuals. The last and one of the most important phases in training is the transitional phase. Now, don't get it twisted. That doesn't mean to go get a sex change or go do something retarded, right?
And is it correct you just started identifying as female 2 weeks ago?
I'm not here to talk about my transition. I'm here to kick some f***ing ass.
It means that you have just got done peaking, and now you're getting ready to start another phase over again. The transitional phase should be a phase in where you have a lot of information based on your old PRs that maybe you just set a handful of weeks ago, and you can see where your lagging muscle groups are, i.e. are your knees bucking in? Is your back rounding over? When you bench, are your elbows flaring way out and you're unlocking your shoulder blades? A lot of these different factors with training are going to be huge in the transitional phase, because the transitional phase is where you actually bring everything down and let all of the weaknesses take primary emphasis. But it doesn't necessarily mean you train in a preparatory phase. So in the transitional phase, we tend to drop down the GPP a little bit, solely focus on structural weak points, so then that way when we go back into a prep phase, we have good structural balance. So if I were to say in general, what I would do is in preparatory phase, we're trying to enhance capacity and still fix weaknesses. In the main phase, we're trying to be a better lifter or a better sport-specific athlete, focus on specific abilities. And in the transitional phase, we're taking what we've learned from the main season and we're adapting it to fix everything before we start a whole new cycle over again. So as you can see, weaknesses play a huge part in the entire year process. Now, for you guys, this took me many, many years in order to understand and figure out and time everything correctly, which is why we made the manuals, why we're on TrainHeroic, and also why we do custom online coaching, where we design this based off exactly what you need and what your equipment has to offer. So go visit wenningstrength.com and let us help you with your phases of training to make sure that you are making optimal progress and reducing mileage. Talk to you guys later.
Lately I've been living like I can't take a loss. They ain't wanna help me, that's what made me